So you have your data, so now what? This is what this workshop's here for. So when you go into your project, there is a way that you can export your raw data. Within that data tab, or that workbook, I should say, there's a number of different tabs. Some are the non-relational tab, your relational data, your open-ended data, survey questions, and matrix questions. So let me go into the platform right now. I was logged in. But within your platform, when you log in, you'll see kind of like an overview screen. Depending on if you were the project owner or the person who is just kind of a collaborator on the account, you will find the listing of your project either in like your projects or the collaborator section of the home page. And then from there, when you click into your project, you'll kind of get this overview page here. So that being said, this overview page gives you some good insights and kind of like what's happening in your network. It gives you a quick link to get into your analyzer. We've already kind of went through the stages of where we've added members and updated your survey metrics, so and collected data. So these three tabs are kind of not as important right now, but you can always go back and update member information and different things as well. You can easily get to the analyzer from this homepage just by clicking this Go to Analyzer button, or you can click this Analyze here. For the raw data export, you will see this Export Data button, and then you can export the project data or the member data. The difference there is that the member data basically is tracking your response rate during data collection. So it gives you good status of who started, not started, or submitted the survey, as well as like a timestamp on when they agreed to that consent. So that's sometimes important for tracking purposes, right? If you wanted to know when a member actually maybe agreed to that consent, if there maybe was an IRB or different things around that taking the participation, I should say. So when you download the raw data, let me just quickly walk through these tabs. And for those who dream about numbers, feel free to ping us after, because there's so much you can do with this these numbers here and this raw data that we would love to dive in with you and explore. But one way is, so again, these tabs down here, your non-relational data is any question that was asked, just like that single choice or multiple choice. And those are found here with the like easy setup, so that if you wanted to do averages or sums, you're able to do that. You can also easily export it out and put it into something like SPSS or SAS if you wanted to do correlations or different statistical measures that way as well. Your relational data, this tab I feel is like kind of the most fun and the one that you can get lost in the most, just because this goes down to the dyadic level. So this tells you about each individual partnership that was reported within your project. And the head is the person who took the survey, and the tail is the partner they picked in that question. And then these are the how they answered about that partner. So what you can see here is, for example, this is all the partners that this organization picked. And as you can tell, they are coded by a short name that is for the purposes of being able to show up in a map really easily. If we had their long names, it'd be really hard to really see the nodes within the map. But on these other tabs, you can kind of see who each of those organizations are there. But so one thing that we like to do here is you can see, again, this is the perception that this organization had of their partners. If you ask questions about like value or trust, you can look to see, are they rating their partners the same? Do they have similar relationships with others? Do they get along with some more than others, right? Like it's all about those nuances between partners sometimes too. And then the other thing you can do is you can sort by the tail. So when you, I don't know why this, so when you sort by your tail, I don't know why it's not pinning my thing here, you're able to really see, oh, well, let me sort. confused by what's happening here. Oh, it's in protected view. Or either way, so for the sake of time, I won't move on, but you'll be able to sort by the tail, and then you could see, for example, how certain partners rated that one organization. So then you can see, okay, do they rate their partners the same as like people rate them, right? Or is there kind of like a reciprocal perception happening, or is there like, you know, some kind of interesting thing? The other thing you can do that's really interesting is if you look at these kinds of relational questions. So this is a question that asks, like, what's that level of intensity? If you sort by the level of intensity, and then you can look to see what are the types of activities that they're working on together? What are the types of outcomes that are being achieved at each of those levels of intensity? Because then you can see for our work, maybe the cooperative level is where partners are getting the most bang for their buck, right? Or do they really need to be integrated with each other? Those who are integrated, maybe they're actually seeing less outcomes. You know, who knows? So it's like really being able to look at your data and kind of make you know, determinations, you know, strategies based on what you're seeing too. So that's one way to kind of sort the data and look at it that way. Your open-ended data is any question that asks for an open-ended response. Sorts in here. Obviously, if they didn't answer, it's kind of a blank cell. Your survey codes is the questions that were asked in the survey. So if you want to kind of refer back to what did we ask in question 8, you can easily kind of go back to see what the response options were and how you asked the question. It will also download any attributes that you have assigned to that member. So what's really great about this too is that I can kind of take this column, and if I wanted to paste it into my non-relational tab, now I can sort by that attribute. And so then I can look to see, okay, are different organization types contributing specific resources? Are they servicing specific cities? So then you can kind of, you know, use the attribute data to do what we call, you know, cross tabs and look at different data points together and how, you know, what the relationship is between those. So some really fun things you can do with that. Alter network is not going to really apply to your work. This is more for our Partner Me projects. So that will be blank in your project. If you asked any matrix questions, those will show up here. Again, very similar to how they're shown in the non-relational tab. So lots of fun things you can do in this data tab. So again, if you're the person who loves numbers or you even just want to know more about it, feel free to ping us because there are lots of ways or tricks that we can show you to dive deeper into your data as well. So let me then that we go into this analyzer piece real quick. Before I go into that, any questions, comments or anything? Okay. And feel free to, again, just stop me at any time. So in the analyzer, as I mentioned, you can get to that by either going to this analyze button or straight from the overview screen, you can click this and it will also take you to your analyzer. This is where all that data in the spreadsheet just lives online. And so you can do most of the same things. Like you're not quite able to do some cross tabs or some of those others, you know, advanced measures in a way, but you're able to view that relational data with network maps. You can also view that non-relational data within your network maps. We also have charts and graphs here. So any of those non-relational or open-ended questions will show up here. You can select to show it, you know, as a bar chart, pie chart. We are currently working on updates to our analyzer. So this feature will be like the bar charts and things will be a little bit more fun and be able to bring in attributes at a later date too, which we're really excited about. But again, you can see the open-ended questions here. Your network scores. This tab is kind of this. If you included any of the partner metrics in your survey, like the value and trust scores, these will show up here at a network level, which is just an average of all the members together. And then the overall score is just an average of all 3 of the metrics together. And your individual scores do that same thing. It just it's an average of that person's of the perceptions of that person's partners, you know, excuse me. So for example, Department of Human Services, these scores are showing this is an average of all the members that picked Department of Human Services as a partner. It's an average of those scores and how and the perceptions of the Department of Human Services. So these aren't scores of how the Department of Human Services rated their partners. These are scores of that organization. And so then you can kind of sort those by, you know, most to least. In this situation, anything over a 3 or 75% is considered positive. And then you have some other kind of scores here, which are around centrality scores. So it's a degree centrality. And so this is kind of basically just saying who has the most connections in the network and what's that percentage. And so if you sort by that, you can kind of see who could be identified as a quote unquote key player in the network. And so then you can kind of, oh, I did completion rate. So then I was like, that's a lot of the same way. So then you can kind of see here, okay, that the behavioral health group, they are the most connected member of our network, right? So if they were to leave our network, what would happen, right? They're connected to 25, like these scores in degree and out degree is in relation to those that head and tail kind of situation. So in degree is if you're thinking about a network map, these are all the arrows coming into that circle, into that node. And the out degree are all the lines leaving that node and all the partners they picked. So for this behavioral health group, they picked more partners than picked them, right? So they probably have some reciprocal relationships, but not, you know, there's some that aren't, that, you know, they perceive that they have a relationship where the other side didn't. And so you can use this data to kind of see, okay, if someone didn't answer the survey, then they're going to have a 0 for the out degree because they did not answer. So they did not provide data. But if they have a 0 for both of those, then it's most likely that they're an isolate, meaning that since they did not participate in the survey and did not answer questions about their partnerships and no one selected them, then partnerships about them were not included in, you know, in the data. So that's something to consider, especially if it's an organization that you know has partners. It's mostly just an indication of them not answering this. So here's network scores. We'll go into these a little bit more in our scenarios. If you included address information, you are also able to see your network map overlaid geographically. And so this could be really fun, especially when you're thinking about like statewide initiatives, like both groups here, to really kind of make sure that you're representing specific communities, right? Or that, you know, that there is representation in a certain part of the state that that may, and so this data can kind of help you see that in a way. This example is mapped out kind of in Montana, in the Bozeman area there. And so just so you can kind of see, you can also sort any of these connections or the lines that are showing by any of your network relational questions. And so I know someone mentioned looking at the specific activities that, you know, councils are working on together and those kinds of things. So you can pull up that relational data selection and then and really see that here. Right now it's being a little sassy right now. But for example, right now it's showing all the activities. But if you wanted to only show like joint programming, right, like you can deselect all of these and only show that one. For the sake of time, though, I'm going to move on real quick to the network map part, because I think this is where you might be spending most of your time within the analyzer as well. So we mentioned that there's questions that we asked about partnerships, right? These are those relational questions. You can see kind of a map of any of those selections. So if you wanted to choose any of these, so this is the level of intensity, this is, you know, what types of activities, frequency, all the different options that you'd want to select, you can go ahead and select any of those, right? And it's going to kind of default to kind of showing all at once. at the moment, it kind of got sassy. So now it's gonna, I clicked it a couple too many times, I think at once, but it'll catch up to me. You can also choose to see a non-relational question. So any of those questions that were single choice or multiple choice, you can also choose to visualize that on top of this. And what's interesting is I had this all put up before, and then I went into the GIS. I think it's that GIS. Problems there. But the other thing you can also do is you can color nodes by different attributes. So for example, this demo is showing organization type as an attribute. So all of the nodes are colored by those different org types. So we have like an early childhood, a health clinic. We tag someone as a key player to show you. And so you can kind of see that. You can also size the nodes by different scores. For this example, we sized it by centrality. And so it is showing the larger nodes have the most connections. And so what's nice about that is that you can really kind of see who's a key player or who has the most connections. You can sort by the different value and trust scores. So if you're really looking to integrate a new policy or something that might need someone's influence in the community, right? You can sort by, you can size the nodes by power and influence score. And so then you can kind of see, okay, who's the person who has the most influence, right? In our demo, everybody is very valuable and very trusted. So just don't note that this, there's not a lot of insight to glean from this at the moment. But you can, again, just kind of see that the different ways you can size a node and the ways you can color a node as well. So this option here too is filtering. So what's really fun about this is that if you have multiple attributes, you can filter by those attributes as well. So I know for the growing local side of things, like there is food councils, right, that you tagged as attributes. So what's really fun about that is you can look, like you can sort and say, I only want to look at one specific council, or I want to look at two councils together, and I only want to see that data. You can also show like the colors by organization type, but then you're only showing the connections of those two councils. And so it's a really great way to kind of, so for the sake of this, I will like filter out some of these. Possibly my internet is being a little wonky today, I think, as well. But when you're able to do that, it's really fun, because then you can see, okay, I'm only looking at the data for those two councils, and I'm going to go ahead. Oh, loaded the whole thing then. So then you can see, okay, if I want to look at like these two councils together, I want to see what are the activities that these partners are working on together, or cat-free or situation of the networks and networks. I want to look at, you know, only these two networks together and nothing else, or these two groups. And then you can kind of see, okay, what are they working on together with just these organizations. So that's the fun part about filtering. With the data options, my computer. My computer is being a little slow, and I apologize for this. But one thing here too is those settings that you can set for your map. So these are things like your label sizes, your label colors, line colors, a background color. You're also able to kind of filter out if you want to show isolated nodes or not. I know for some of the growing local side, it's, you know, it kind of might be a larger network. So if you wanted to filter out those who are not connected to anybody, it will automatically get rid of those. You can also show either details or an ego map for each of the nodes listed. So right now it's showing details. So if I click on any node here, it will pop up with a little box, and it will tell me some information about that member. So it will tell me, you know, any attribute information we have listed, if there's an address, And then it will also give me their scores. And then the best part is it will also link you right to that member profile. So if you want to get to that, like more information on them, you have easy access to that. The other option you can select, which I really think is a lot of fun and I play around with a lot, is you can play around with this ego map option. So when you click on this, it's going to give you an ego map of this organization that I just picked, but it's not just showing me the connections of this organization to their partners. It's also showing me if their partners are connected to anybody else in that person's network as well. So this is a great way of looking to see if this is like, if this member is part of a coordinated network, right? Or if their network is not coordinated. In this situation, very coordinated. And I would say that this early childhood center here probably has a lot to do with that coordination of their network. But for some groups, you know, like for instance, this group, right, their partners do not know each other or are not connected to each other. So it's a kind of a way to ascertain, right, if that member is well embedded, not just within their network, but within, you know, others in the network too, because that can also help you if you're thinking about reducing redundancies, or if, like, you know, that first example, that early childhood center is embedded in a coordinated network. So they might not need to be as connected to each partner to get the same information, right? Especially if maybe they want to, you know, expand into a new neighborhood or something, you know, they're going to need space to be able to make that connection. You can show arrows that shows the directionality of who chose who, right? And then those kinds of things. So that's kind of the analyzer in a nutshell. We're going to go through the analyzer a little bit more in some scenarios that we're going to be taking place. But again, feel free to post a question in the chat or just stop me at any point in time, and I'm happy to clarify anything. So I will jump back into our PowerPoint, and we will move into our ways we can use our network data.
So we're going to jump into some examples for you guys. So in this first scenario, we're looking at important roles members play. So let's imagine you got word that the contact at the state agency who has worked closely with your network for years is leaving or retiring. And the new person representing that organization does not want to stay as involved as the last person because the organization will have new strategic aims. So now you look and see that that organization is a key player in your network and is connected to over half of the network.
So I'm going to walk through this in Partner. Okay. Oh, my keyboard's not catching up there. Here we go. Okay, so we kind of went through this a little bit when I was talking about those network scores, right? So if I were to sort by degree centrality, I would see that our Board of Cooperative Ed Services, that's our person in this example. They're our state agency and our person's retiring. And so we look to see that they are connected to 64% of the network, right? And so for us, that can be kind of a concern, right? Because they picked a lot of partners and a lot of partners picked them. And not just that, but if I look to see, if I look at their scores, they're also really highly valued by their partners and also really trusted, right? So they're very reliable, right? And really in support of our mission. And so a new person or a new contact coming in may influence that, right? They may not have as much time to give. They may not agree with the direction of the network in certain ways. And so something to just consider, who is the representation of that organization, and how can you maintain that same level of involvement or commitment from different contacts, right? As they kind of, as that representation may change. So that's one thing that I would look at, is I would come to my network scores, and I would look to see what would be some red flags, or what would be things that would be concerning for me if it would, if this organization's participation changed, right? So looking at that, I can see that, again, they're well trusted, they're valued, and they have a lot of connections. So right now I'm actually going to filter all my folks back in because it caught up with me, and then I need them back in. Because one of the things that I'm going to show you is if I filter out and I take out the key player, what happens to the whole network, right? Does it fall apart? You know, because that's important. If we took this organization out and all of a sudden there was like two different groups, or an organization became isolated, like this person over here, right? We would say, what's going on here? This key player is the only one that's connected to this organization. So we need to at least make sure that they maintain that relationship, or else we may lose the connection to this group, right? So that's one important thing to note about this key player, right, and their connectivity. The other piece to note is the other thing I showed you about the ego map. Sorry, that's my train of thought for a second. When I click on, I can, got to wait for them to kind of stop bouncing for a second. When I click on that state agency's ego map, I can see, oh, showing me details. So I can see, how many connections he had, right? When I highlighted him and I was able to do that. So that's really amazing to see in terms of if I took him out, are all the lines that he's only going to, are we going to lose that connection? But if I go into his ego map and I filter him out, does his own network fall apart, right? Like we know the big network doesn't fall apart, but does his own network fall apart? And another way you can filter out is you can also just kind of click here in this network key, and you can just click on it and it will kind of cross it out, right? So kind of showing that same thing in his map, he's the only one connected to the CC one. That's what's happening. But then when I go back to the full map and click him out, the whole network is still, you know, together again, minus CC1. So again, this would be my red flag, and my action step would say, okay, how can we make sure that the new that the new person is connected to, sorry, catching up to me here on all my clicks, that the new person is connected here. It's really important that this childcare one has a connection to either the state agency or someone else in our network, right? Because if they may not get the same information, they may not be able to connect to key resources, especially if that state agency contributes certain resources, right? So one thing you can see as well is if I kind of pull him back in, I might want to see maybe the state agency is working specifically with, you know, we'll go into kind of your example, Cap, a little bit about, let's only look at health organizations and our key player, right? So now I'm filtering out this way, and I'm only looking at, there's an extra group there. You don't need to. So now I'm only looking at health clinics, the key player, and local health departments. And so now if I take out my key player, you know, you can see that the network's still pretty connected, but then we have this public health department over here that does become siloed. So specifically looking if that organization is connected to like a specific council or a specific organization type, it could be really interesting to see if they're really the key connector. One thing I'll just bring up as we go into the other scenario is in one of our other projects looking at veteran suicide prevention in rural communities. One thing that we've always noted is that the coordinator for that program is always the one, you know, coordinating the activities around the veteran suicide prevention. So if we remove that coordinator, the network definitely becomes siloed, and you can see that the types of activities that they're working on really does flow through that one organization. So there's a lot of different things you can learn by just kind of going into this granular level. But yes, someone unmuted, so please.
Sarah,
Yes.
this is Cap. I'm afraid I might be asking you to go backwards, so I hope folks aren't annoyed with me, but I don't see, didn't catch how you actually, what's the thing that you're doing to remove one of the nodes from your
Yeah.
map?
Yeah, right, of course. So right here is this map key right here. There's actually two ways you can remove nodes from your map, right? So one way is this network, the key here. So I can easily select and add in a group, or I can take them out, right? This is only gonna do this by the nodes that you're coloring by. So whatever attribute you're coloring the nodes by, this is one way that you can filter those nodes in and out. The other way, like, so if I wanted to look at two attributes at once, I wanted to look at, these are the organization types, but I also want to look at, and it will always tell you here how many, nodes are being shown right now. And since I'm filtering by this, it took those off for me. But maybe I have this level of contribution here that I also want to filter by. So now I want to look at only those who said that they can give me a lot of contribution, right, to this network. So now I'm looking at, okay, I'm looking at specific groups that can give me a level of contribution. And this is an attribute that I've put in. So you can turn anything into an attribute, and you can do sort like this as well. So we can talk with you about that, Kat, because I know one thing that we're still kind of thinking it through with you is what to use as an attribute and what can be used. For the growing local side. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's what I was missing is my list of attributes is super tiny. So I don't,
Yep.
I just basically don't have a lot of options, correct?
No, you'll only have like probably like the address information.
Yeah.
So again, you can sort to say, I only want to look at, cities maybe better, like only those who are in, Bozeman. Again,
Well,
so you can really filter through here. Go ahead.
I like your list of attributes better than mine, so I'll have to work towards that.
Yeah, and the best thing about attributes is that you can change them and add them and update them at any time, right? So you've collected your data, so now you're just adding information about the members, right? About a characteristic about that node, and so that can be added at any time. And so yes, so even on the growing local site, if we can think through other attributes or different ways you can show that data too. So I'm gonna pass over to back over to our PowerPoint here, but just so you can see that there's different ways that you can kind of see that key players' influence in the different types of networks they maybe belong in, right? Or see if they play a key role in a specific network. So let me go here, and then we're gonna do this.
So here were the terms that we covered in that last scenario. So a key player is a member of the system who is connected to the most people in your network. So the network can heavily rely on these key players. You saw an example, if you take the key player out, you might lose some connections to some other organizations that was in the network. We have degree centrality. So this is the percentage of partners connected to an organization. A node that has a high degree centrality score may be very active in forming relationships. This person or organization can be a popular partner with who you should connect with. They can have some influence as well in your network. So here are some recommendations on network management. So here are some key questions to think about. So which network members have the highest degree centrality scores? What would happen if this organization leaves or cut ties to certain types of organizations? Comparing degree centrality and value scores, do those same members score high on both of the metrics? Do they have high individual trust and degree centrality scores? Some strategic action steps that you can take are organizations with high scores on multiple metrics may particularly be advantageous partners and important partners to remain within the network. Identify if it is important that the new contact maintains the same level of connectivity to the network. If it is important, take care to integrate those new contacts into your network meetings and bringing them up to speed on the work that's being carried out and their organization's role within the network success.
All right, so let's walk through our second scenario where you would use your member profiles. So let's imagine that you're going to a community meeting with some network members you're not as familiar with to discuss a new initiative or intervention for the network. You want to walk into this meeting as prepared as possible on how to integrate this new initiative into the network. So you look up the member profiles for each of the attending organizational partners. And using the network map, you realize there's a critical partner who is not invited. And Sarah will now walk us through this second scenario.
Here. Okay, so let me put some filters back in here because I took some out. So just to recap real quick, again, you can filter nodes in and out. So the circles in and out of a map by either this filter tab or by the little key button over here. The lines between the nodes, you can filter out and show different options when you go into this show results based on. So you can show different results based on different types of activities or their different response options. So to our scenario is, so imagine like it's, so we'll go kind of like a food situation. So imagine that there's going to be a new initiative or a new policy around food access that you want to see who in the network can help you either implement or who might want to be at the table as you brainstorm how to, get that policy in front of, the right, legislative hands, right? So you'd come to your data set, right? And you could say, okay, well, what activities are we working on together based on what you asked in your survey? You can filter out by that. So for example, we can show only advocacy and policy. Right now, I know it's going to be sassy with me because my computer is running slow. I think my nephew's on a class right now. So one thing to do is what you can also do is you can note what the level of contribution is, right? So if someone was able to, actually, that's not the one. If someone was able to contribute policy or advocacy or that as a resource, I would want to highlight that. Or if it was a specific policy around, food and health or something around that piece, I would look to say, okay, who has expertise or services in physical health? And so then when it did. So then all those who contribute that resource are now highlighted with this little arrow. Not an arrow, sorry, with a little halo. So one thing that I would note for that example is I would say, okay, I want to make sure that at least all the people who contribute that specific expertise are invited to this meeting, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure that we have all of these folks included. And then to the scenarios example, one thing that's great about the member profiles that have been created and that are part of the Partner CPRM is that you're able to print those out and have them on hand for that meeting. So you can have information about those partners, what they can contribute, who they work with, how they're perceived by others. And so you can easily get to those member profiles either by clicking the node details, or you can go into it by the members tab as well. So I can I'll show you both options. But so I highlighted who I wanted to include based on the halo in the network map. From there, I'm going to go to their member profile. I'm going to save as a PDF. I can easily get back to the demo just by clicking, the analyzer just by clicking the back button. But you can save it as a PDF, you can print it, and you can also customize them. So if you wanted to just have a specific view or only have something or you only want to print off their survey answers, or you only want to look at how members perceive them, you can click on these different tabs appear within the member profile, and you can look at specifically that information. The overview screen is either the default or it's customized based on your project. And so you'll see those examples here, but it'd be really nice to kind of see, okay, if you're, so imagine you have a stack of these and you go into that community meeting, you can easily say, okay, everybody who's here, I know that this health department can contribute, volunteers and some time. I know this childcare center can contribute maybe some in-kind resources, or has some data that they might be able to help contribute to this around why we need to push this policy. So then you can use that information and have it and share that information at the meeting as well. What I love about these member profiles too is it's a way to also hold members accountable, right? Because this is how they answered the survey. This is what they said they can contribute. This is their perceptions of the work. And then, the scores also gives good insight, right, on, is this person gonna throw a wrench in things when we try to, talk about something that might be a little bit more controversial, or something that might be harder to implement, right? Or we know this person isn't usually reliable, so we might not want to, consider them to be the person that's going to show up every time, or we might consider someone else to take a lead, right, and not kind of put that on their shoulders. So these member profiles are a really great way to kind of prepare for different meetings. You could also take that member profile from that first example of that state agency, print that off, and give that member profile to the new contact and say, this is how, so-and-so has represented, this agency in our network in the past. Here's, take a look at this. Do you have questions about it? Here's the partners they talk to. So you can really use it as a tool to kind of help get them up to speed as well in that first situation that we talked about. You can easily edit a member profile too. So like if you notice that like maybe there's like a misspelling, or that address is off or something like that, or perhaps we didn't actually select their level of contribution, right? Like they weren't tagged with an attribute when they should have been. You can easily update that information and save it. So that's also really helpful and handy. But yeah, so that's one way to kind of use member profiles to kind of think strategically about who's invited to that specific meeting, or who should we invite to that meeting, and kind of come to that with some information about their relationships and what they can contribute to the work. And I'm going to go ahead and go into this next part.
So as we mentioned earlier, we do have that interpretation guide that we threw in the chat that you can use and refer to. That includes all the key terms that we use and a lot more. But for this example,
I have
we
a
reviewed.
quick question about the interpretation guide, because I was actually
please.
looking over it. Is there any way to kind of download the overall guide, or do we just need to bookmark the link? Just thinking about process.
Yes, definitely save the link. Right now, we don't have it, I think, in a Word format at the moment, but yeah, just save the link. You should only have to put in the password once, hopefully, but let us know if, and for whatever reason you can't get to the link. We also have it included in the What's Next packet that we'll be sending you as well. So there's a few places you'll have access to that link.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. So for overall value in this sense, it measures essentially how much members value one another. And it's really important to keep in mind that this is measured by capturing other members' perceptions of one another amongst 3 dimensions, to include power and influence, level of involvement, and resource contribution. And then we have overall trust, which essentially measures how much members trust one another. And again, it's important to remember that this is measured by capturing members' perceptions of others amongst 3 dimensions, which include reliability, mission alignment, and openness to discussion. The overall trust score reflects the average of the scores along those 3 dimensions. So sometimes when a score comes out to be really low, it might not necessarily be because there isn't trust. with that organization, but maybe a lot of other organizations within that network aren't aware that that organization exists. And we've also included the interpretation guide that you can use back, that you can refer back to. And this essentially highlights how scores of at least 3 out of 4 are considered good scores, and anything under a 3 can indicate an area of growth. And while the overall score is important, it is important to note that each score is considered equally important.
And you can, I'll just say real quick, in the raw data, right, you can see, you know, you could be like, oh, that score might not make sense for that organization. I kind of want to dive deeper. So if you go into that raw data and you sort by the tail and you look, you know, how partners rated that organization on that one metric, you might see that majority rated them really high, but maybe like 2 or 3 rated them really low. And so there maybe is just a disconnect at, you know, at a more dyadic level between different partners versus like, you know, a bigger issue with that partner, right? Like if you went to look at the data and almost all their partners rated them low in a certain area, right? Then that would be like an area of opportunity, right? To kind of approach that organization and say, how can we, you know, increase, you know, show others, you know, how much resources you do contribute or how much time you're able to give, or, you know, let's celebrate when you're able to, you know, meet those deliverables that, you know, others, you know, ask of you. So things like that. So I think it's fun to be able to look at the raw data and kind of really look at what's happening at those individual partnerships.
So how you can leverage member profiles includes downloading them, like Sarah mentioned, in advance of community meetings or gatherings to give you a quick reference guide to each partner and their place in the network. This can help guide your efforts to building new relationships, leveraging existing contacts, and avoiding creating redundant partnerships. You can also share profiles with partners to use themselves as a map of their network. This can be a very powerful tool for engaging them in the network tracking process and providing a tangible resource and benefit to drive involvement in future surveys and projects. It's also helpful for demonstrating an organization's connectedness to community members, funders, and other key stakeholders. We also think this is a cool feature that you can share with respondents that gives them something to take away from taking the survey. I'm sure we're all familiar with being asked to take surveys and then we're not familiar, or we don't necessarily know where that data goes. So this is a cool way to kind of share back with them in a concise way what they responded. And additionally, our recommendations on network management would be considering asking these key questions. Are any of these members connected to hard to reach members? Do these members contribute unique resources to help spearhead the initiative? Are they aligned with the mission of the network? Are they perceived as being reliable? And are they perceived to contribute resources or have a high level of involvement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that could be really interesting too is if you look to see what an organization self-selected that they contribute to the network. And if that list is, you know, long, but then their, you know, resource contribution score is low, then there's definitely like a disconnect in how others are seeing what they're able to contribute. And they're definitely not able to leverage those resources, right? If they're not able to really see what they're that other organization's contributing. So ways to kind of look at that in tandem. Well.
And then we have our recommendations on network management. So for some strategic action steps can include identifying network members with the highest individual value scores and making sure that these members' strengths are properly leveraged. Consider also whether the high score is more a reflection of the overall organization or the individual, or both. When interpreting value scores, it is important to know that the number of partners who chose them, which is the N, is more correlated to those scores than who the member picked, which is out as a partner. If the member has lower value scores, they may need to be engaging in more ways with other members.
So are these action steps kind of based on the results of our particular data? Are these just good standard strategic action steps based on what you see across all of the groups that you work with?
Good question. It's it's across all the groups that we work with and just different things that we've noted, but we are at any time as you guys are diving deeper into your data or want to kind of dive into any of the recommendations or anything that's included with your report, we're happy to kind of have to go through specifically your project with you as well. But for right now, these are, yeah, at the high, at kind of a high level looking across in regard to that scenario.
Great, because I could see like a good kind of one-on-one conversation with our report. Not to take us off kilter, but that's one thing that I could see that could be useful maybe in the future too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And so we're going to go into our last scenario. So this is tracking network information over time. So imagine you hosted that meeting in scenario 2, and you want to track who said they anticipate they would be willing to help with the new initiative and other notes from the meeting. Once the initiative is launched, you want to see how that intervention impacted partnerships within the network. So now you add an attribute to track the level of involvement the member anticipated contributing, and you add a notes attribute to track your notes from the meeting. When ready, you set up and launch a new project to collect data on how the new initiative has impacted the network.
Last one in partner. This one. Okay, so as we kind of mentioned, right, you're able to update and add change attribute information, those characteristics about nodes and members at any time. So you can easily get to that in a couple different, like 2 different ways. One, in the settings area, when you click on that, you're able to see there's like these kind of like this manage attributes. And there's also this customized member profiles. So if you wanted to make any changes to your member profiles, that's where you'd make those. But in your manage attribute area, you can see we've kind of done this workshop a couple times. So we've added in a couple attributes around this willingness to contribute. But I'll go ahead and put in here for the for this one, these are going to be our January 17th notes. So for to relate back to the scenario, we just held this event, or we just held this community brainstorming, conversation, and now the action steps are, okay, we made a note about the involvement that certain organizations can give, or the different ideas that they contributed, and so we want to kind of note that here. So we're gonna I'm gonna put that in as a text field, just because that notes that it is it's a free text, so I can go into any respondent and I can kind of type in any note about them. One thing I will say is this is the kind of the only attribute that you won't necessarily be able to filter by is anything that's kind of like a text like that, but anything that's single select or multi-select, you'll be able to filter and sort in the network maps by. So I added in that attribute, and I also say I'm gonna make this be my level of contribution. I'm gonna edit it for new initiative, because maybe maybe it is maybe they have a level of contribution for a different program, or maybe a different event, right? If you're hosting multiple events or hosting different things, you can track it over time, right? If that attribute changes for them. So you can easily go into your member area and you can search for your members. So if I had a list of the folks who I attended that meeting with, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just kind of search for, our Board of Cooperative Ed Services. I'm going to click this little drop down and I'm just going to edit the kind of contact card for this organization. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say they actually only have some level of involvement right now. And so that's what I'm going to note here. And then for the January 17th, I'm going to say excited, but does not have a lot of time. Oh my gosh, I can't type, sorry, until March, right? So then I'm just going to track this so that I can note, okay, this this contact, right? They're excited, they can give some contribution, but for right now, you know, they might not be able to give it until March. And so I'm just tracking the notes for that organization. And so then when I go back to his member profile, if I click on it right here, it's going to show up as in once it loads real quick. It will show up here under the information for that organization. So it's tracking now. I have my notes from all of my different meetings with them. So they're still excited, but they don't know how much time they can contribute. Now they're still excited, but they don't have time till March, right? So now we have more information. So it is a way that you can kind of track different information or points of contact with that or a member also over time as well, without, you know, needing to send a new survey or collect necessarily new data in a way. But you as the network manager are kind of managing those partners and the information that's going in. If you were ready and you were like, okay, now that new initiative, it's been a year since we've talked about this and a year since we've launched it, that would be a good time to kind of think about wanting to do a new data collection time point. And then at that point, then you can kind of look at a comparison between the two. And we are actually working on right now different features. Well, in the analyzer, you'll be able to pull up, you know, the different time points and look at them side by side. So you can really see that the change either in this individual's growth over time or the network's growth over time. So let me go back to our PowerPoint.
So here are the terms we covered in this last scenario. So we went over our attribute. So you can assign each node an attribute. These attributes are used to identify a characteristic for each node. So it can be chosen based on what makes sense to each network. So in the example, we had like the different types of organizations in that demo, but you might want to use different attributes as it pertains to your own projects. And so you can define those attributes, decide on the categories, and then type that attribute information for each node, and then look at the data a little bit differently by categorizing those attributes or taking them out. So we also went over longitudinal analysis. So this is the tracking and measuring your network data over time, noting how data has changed and how partnerships evolve over time. And then relationship budget, the time and resources spent managing relationships to achieve the collaborative's goals.
Yeah, and I just noticed, I don't think I touched too much on the relationship budget piece, but one thing that you'll look at in, and this kind of goes into when you look at the raw data, especially around like the level of intensity that an organization is connecting with other partners around. So for example, right, if I had 10 partners, but I am connected to them all at the integrated level for each of those, right, my relationship budget is probably over 100% because I am giving so much to create that such integrated relationship that it takes a lot more time, effort, and energy to maintain that over time. And I definitely don't have enough energy, right, to be able to make a new connection to maybe a new population or a new organization that's interested in joining the group, right? So really thinking about the balance that an organization is contributing to the network, and that includes, you know, like their level of time that they're giving to different network activities, as well as how they're showing up to network meetings, if they're even able to attend, you know, frequent meetings, or if they're more kind of there as like a thought partner, or like, you know, kind of figuring out what's that organization's role within the network and how can you best tap into that role without overburdening them, especially because we know a lot of these organizations, right, this might not be the only network that they're involved in. They might also be involved in, you know, a handful of others. And so really just trying to give them the best, thinking about the best way to help them manage their own time, as well as looking back to their ego maps and things to see, can they reduce redundancy? They don't necessarily need to be connected to every single you know, childcare center, but maybe they need to be connected to the one that's going to get them all the, you know, it's going to get them the same information, right, as if they were connected to everybody. And so using the data to look at members' participation that way is also really valuable, because sometimes those who are tasked to be the leaders of a network are those who are also the leaders of another network, or they might be the most powerful and influential, but they might not have the most time to actually give to lead the network. So really thinking through the different ways and ways that people bring value, and that they can be, that their role can be leveraged within the network as well.
And so here are,
Yeah, there we go. Sorry,
yeah.
just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I didn't skip ahead.
So here are some of the CPRM subscription features. So you're able to pull up network data whenever you need it. You can pull in that member data whenever you need it. You can showcase your network connectivity and funding opportunities. And you can track that connectivity over time as it is happening. And here are recommendations. So some questions to consider is, what network activity do you want to track over time? In what ways do you anticipate a new intervention to change the network? When is the right time to conduct a follow-up or second round of network data collection? And here are some action steps that you can take. Consider what the new initiative may require from the partners to implement, their time, staffing, funding. Think about members' relationship budgets and if they have space in their budget to work on this new initiative. Partners within the community are likely already overwhelmed with meetings and the time needed to engage in cross-sector opportunities. So try not to overwhelm partners with excessive invitations and requests.
So we recognize this is a lot of information to digest. So we wanted to give some tools and resources for you as you move forward. As we mentioned earlier, this is being recorded, so we'll send this out in a follow-up email later this week, along with some additional resources to include a what's next packet, which is full of really useful resources on how to disseminate your data. We'll also be sharing some facilitation worksheets that are really helpful in using with the network members to gain alignment and success outcomes and sustainability, as well as potential next action steps. We've also shared with the social network analysis interpretation guide. And as Sarah mentioned, you should hopefully only have to use the password once. But if you have any problems accessing that, please reach out to us. And then we also have our support hub, which has a lot of FAQs and information to use your partner CPRM. We recommend kind of bookmarking that website so you can use it as reference for the future. And finally, we just really appreciate your partnership with us and hope you found this workshop useful. I will pass it back over to Sarah.
Yeah, and if you have, we can take the next few minutes to just kind of ask, or we can answer any questions you may have. If nothing's coming to mind right now, don't worry. It always happens to me. I walking the dog later and it comes to me then. Don't hesitate to just send us an email. We are happy to either set up another time to kind of go through one-on-one with you about that specific question, or if there's something that you're really interested in your data, but you're not quite sure how to make sense of it, again, just let us know. We are here to assist you. And we also have, being ones who collect data, we love data. So if you have a moment, we will also include this link in our follow-up email, but if you have a moment to scan the QR code and just give us some quick feedback on this workshop, it will really help us tailor it or figure out if there's additional workshops or things or offerings that we can put out there for network managers like yourself to join in and learn about. So we really appreciate any and all feedback. And so please don't hesitate to complete that if you have a few minutes. Any questions?
This is Cap. I'll just take an opportunity to say thanks for the presentation. This is so much information, and I do feel a little bit overwhelmed, to tell you the truth. But the thing is that you guys keep presenting it, and you're giving me a lot of avenues for following up and checking back and understanding what you're saying. There were 2 or 3, I think, like key points
Mhm.
that I need to study. So I might be coming back, but
Yeah.
the in degree and out degree is still
Mhm.
a little bit fuzzy for me.
Okay.
And then I'm totally getting where you guys are using the attributes. So I'm really
Mhm.
looking forward to being able to see how they get applied. So I think
Okay.
those are my 2.
Yeah.
And just to share with you where my head is as we wrap up. Thank you
Oh, that's
guys very
awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and we're hopeful that just kind of like diving into some different scenarios kind of helps bring some tangible use cases to the data, right? We definitely, our goal and our mission at Visible Network Labs is to build capacity of community and folks like yourselves to use this data and to, you know, inform practice, right? Like we don't want data or a report to just sit on a shelf, right? So one of the best things about Partner CPRM is that you are able to kind of go in at any time and play with your data, pull up your data. It's a living data set in a way, right? So when if you learn new information about those partners, or have a secondary data point that you want to, you know, tag them with, as that attribute, right? Like you can continuously add to it and use it to learn from your members. There are some things that we are in the works of developing at the moment, like a public portal, and different things like that. So if you wanted to give your members access to specific data points, right, so that they can use it to search through things, we are working on some features like that. So more to come on that. And there's a little bit of information on that in our What's Next packet, but a lot of different ways that you can give the data back to not just those who took the survey, but to those you're serving as well, to highlight the amazing work that's happening in these. I'm not watching the chat, but yes, yeah, feel free to always just, yeah, check in with us at a different time. No worries, please digest it. We'll share this recording out. And we're just really thankful that you shared this time with us and appreciate your partnership as well. And looking forward to connecting with you at a different time too. When you're ready, just let us know. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and exit out and stop sharing, and we can wrap up